Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
It started over something stupid, one of those arguments you don't even remember the details of a few days later. I had asked if we could plan some time together this weekend. Just us. No errands, no distractions. Just a walk, maybe dinner, maybe something more. Something to remind me we were still married and not just living under the same roof like two strangers who split the bills. Her eyes didn't even lift from her phone. "You'll get intimacy when I feel like it," she said, her voice syrupy with mockery. And then she looked up, smirked, and went right back to scrolling. For a second, I didn't move. I just stood there, feeling my ears buzz. I didn't yell. I didn't sigh. I didn't even ask her what the hell that was supposed to mean. I just smiled, turned, and walked away. That smile wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't angry. It was clarity, cold and sudden. Because in that moment, I saw it all for what it really was. Not just this fight. Not even just this marriage. I saw the pattern, how long I'd been dancing to a song she stopped playing years ago. And how ridiculous I must have looked, trying to make something work that she'd already quietly given up on. She didn't follow me. Not physically. But I felt her watching me go. And I think, even then, some tiny part of her realized something had shifted. She thought she'd won. But I wasn't retreating. I was exiting. That night, I lay in bed beside her, both of us turned away from each other. I could hear the soft flick of her phone screen as she scrolled. My side of the bed felt like the edge of a cliff, and the air between us was too cold to cross. I didn't try. I just stared at the ceiling, eyes open, mind racing, not with panic, but with purpose. I thought about how we got here. 5 years ago, she was warm, soft-spoken, affectionate. She'd laugh at my stupid jokes and pull me into her arms after long days. Our intimacy wasn't just physical, it was this quiet, reassuring presence we had in each other's lives. We had something real. At least, I thought we did. But then came the slow changes. Little things, at first. Less hand-holding. More nights when she was too tired. Fewer shared laughs, more distracted nods. I'd ask about her day, and she'd give me one-word answers. I told myself it was stress. Work. Hormones. Phases. Anything but what it really was. She'd stay up late watching shows I didn't even know she liked, her back turned to me on the couch. When I tried to talk to her about it, just open up, gently, she'd roll her eyes and say I was too sensitive. Or worse, accuse me of being needy. So I backed off. I focused on work. I doubled down on being the responsible one, the bill payer, the errand runner, the husband who never complained. But all I got for it was more distance. More silence. More cold. I didn't tell anyone how bad it had gotten. Not my brother, not my coworkers, not even my best friend, who I used to share everything with. Part of me was ashamed. Part of me still believed if I just gave her space, she'd come back. That the woman I married was still in there somewhere, buried under stress or sadness or whatever excuse I kept telling myself. But tonight ended all that. It was the way she said it. Not just the words, but the way she meant them. Like it was some privilege I hadn't earned. Like she had the power and I should be grateful for crumbs. "You'll get intimacy when I feel like it." She'd finally said it out loud, the thing she'd been acting out for years. And now, I finally heard her. So I stopped fighting for something that no longer existed. No rage. No begging. No more reaching across a void that was never going to be filled. Just a smile, a walk down the hall, and silence. But this silence was mine. And soon, everything else would be too. Because she didn't know it yet, but I had just started packing quietly, piece by piece, the life I was going to take with me. The first thing I did was stop trying. Not in the dramatic, storming out, "we need to talk" kind of way. No, I mean the quiet kind. The kind she wouldn't notice right away. The kind that creeps in slowly, like a breeze through a crack in the window. Chilling, but almost unnoticeable. I didn't reach for her hand on the couch anymore. Didn't ask her if she wanted coffee in the morning. Didn't check in during the day with little messages or gifts like I used to when I still believed I could fix this with kindness. And the weirdest part? She didn't say a word. Maybe at first, she liked it. Maybe she thought she'd finally trained me out of needing affection. Maybe she thought this was what control looked like, having someone orbit around you until they finally stop spinning on their own. But what she didn't realize is, when someone stops spinning, they don't stay still. They drift. And I was drifting fast. I started getting up earlier than her, earlier than I needed to. Not because I had anywhere urgent to be, but because I couldn't stand the quiet tension of our mornings anymore. The way she'd walk into the kitchen and not say a word. The way her eyes would skim right past me like I was the wallpaper. So I left before I had to see her. sat in my car with a coffee, and just breathed. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in months. I started hitting the gym again. Not because I was chasing some revenge body, but because I needed something to pour my energy into that wasn't this empty house. I'd forgotten how good it felt to feel strong, to sweat, to push myself in ways that had nothing to do with being a husband or a provider. And yeah, I started noticing the looks again. From women. From people who saw me. People who didn't look through me like I was just an appliance humming in the background of their lives. But I wasn't stupid. I wasn't doing any of this to cheat or get even. I wasn't her. No, this wasn't about finding someone new. This was about finding me again. One night, about a week after that fight, she noticed the change. I'd just gotten back from the gym. I wasn't rushing to get home anymore, so I walked in around 8. Dinner was already over, takeout again, from the looks of the containers left on the counter. She was in her robe, sitting on the couch watching something on Netflix, a half glass of wine on the table next to her. "You're late," she said, without looking at me. "Didn't realize there was a curfew," I replied, setting my keys down. That got her attention. Her eyes flicked up, like she couldn't believe I'd said it. She watched me move around the kitchen, cleaning up her mess without a word. No sighs, no complaints. Just silent detachment. "You okay?" she asked, more curious than concerned. "Better than I've been in a long time." That answer seemed to rattle her a little. She stared at me like she was trying to figure out what had changed. But she didn't ask anything else. And I didn't offer. The next few days followed the same pattern. I was calm, polite, helpful even, but I stopped being hers. I didn't initiate touch. Didn't ask questions. Didn't show jealousy or even interest. And that silence? It started getting to her. She started testing me in small ways. Wearing lingerie to bed when she usually wore old t-shirts, suddenly interested in asking how my day was. But I didn't take the bait. I was courteous, respectful, but she wasn't the center of my world anymore. She wasn't even in the top 5. Then came the financial shift. I'd always been the one keeping us afloat. Bills, savings, investments, taxes, she never had to think about it. She called herself independent, but she'd never once sat down to look at a credit card statement unless it was to question a charge I made for something I needed. So I made some adjustments. Subtle ones. I canceled a few subscriptions, ones she didn't know I paid for. I rerouted a portion of my salary into a private account she didn't have access to. I started drawing up budgets, planning for a future that didn't include mutual assets. A future without her. She didn't notice right away. But she would. Oh, she would. Especially when the power she thought she had started slipping right through her perfectly manicured fingers. Because it wasn't about sex. It was never about sex. It was about control. And I had just stopped playing her game. It was the way she started watching me that gave her away. Not in an affectionate, rediscovering her husband sort of way. No, this was different. Calculated. Suspicious. Like she knew something was slipping through her hands, but couldn't figure out where the leak was. I'd walk into a room and feel her eyes track me from behind her phone. She'd ask casual questions. "Who were you texting?" Or, "Why so dressed up for the gym?" But the smile wouldn't reach her eyes. She thought I was cheating. The irony nearly made me laugh. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't even flirting. I was just living again. And she didn't know how to handle that. Because in her mind, I was the stable one. The rock. The dependable husband who never strayed, never questioned, never threatened her position at the center of our little world. So when I stopped orbiting, she panicked. That's when I knew she had something to hide. The first crack came from a friend of hers. A woman named Rachel, single, loud, the kind of friend my wife used to keep at arm's length until recently. I ran into her at the grocery store. She spotted me in the wine aisle and did a double take. "Oh, hey," she said, caught off guard. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Why not?" I asked. She opened her mouth like she was about to say something, then closed it just as fast. No reason. Just, "Thought you'd be working or whatever." I didn't press, but I saw it. That flicker of recognition. That little flash in her eyes when someone realizes they've said too much. I played it cool, but that moment stuck with me. That night, I checked my wife's calendar, the one we both shared on our phones for years, mostly to coordinate schedules. Lately, it had been full of vague entries. Consult, wellness thing, creative check-in. Nothing unusual if you didn't know her. But I did. And she wasn't creative. She didn't consult. She wasn't launching any kind of business. I'd asked casually once, and she just shrugged it off. Personal projects, she said. You wouldn't be interested. She was right. I wasn't. But I was now. So I did something I'd never done before, not in all the years of our marriage. I checked her phone. Not in a sneaky, panicked way. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't hesitate. She was asleep. I reached for it, used her fingerprint, and scrolled. The usual texts to friends were there. But so were the deletes. The gaps. The silences between messages. Until I found the folder. She'd hidden an app behind a fake calculator icon. One of those things teenagers use when they're trying to outsmart their parents. I opened it and found the second phone number. The real one. The one she'd been using for him. No name. Just a string of digits. But the messages told the story on their own. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. He hasn't touched me in weeks. It's like living with a shadow. No, he doesn't suspect. He's too passive. I stared at that word for a long time. Passive. That's what I was to her? The man who provided everything. Who built our life from scratch. Who absorbed every slight, every cold shoulder, every dismissive laugh for years, without breaking. She thought that made me weak. I kept reading. The messages were flirtatious. Some were explicit. Some were downright cruel. But one stuck with me more than the others. He just exists. That's it. He pays the bills and disappears. It's boring. It wasn't just an affair. It was contempt. She didn't just cheat. She despised me for making it too easy. That night, I sat on the back deck long after the sun had gone down, letting the cold air bite at my skin, just to remind myself I could still feel something. And I made a decision. This wouldn't be a confrontation. No shouting. No begging her to explain. I wasn't interested in closure. I already had all the answers I needed. This was going to be surgical. Precise. I would cut her out of my life so cleanly, so silently, she wouldn't even realize she was bleeding until I was already gone. But I still needed to know one thing. Who? Because if I was going to dismantle her little fantasy world, I wanted to know exactly whose foundation she built it on. So I ran the number through a contact lookup service. And when the name came up, everything around me went still. I knew him. Of course I did. We worked in the same building. He was the one she always called harmless. The funny one in the IT department who reminded her of a golden retriever. He was married. 2 kids. I'd had beers with him. He once fixed her laptop when it crashed during tax season. She'd baked him cookies for it. And now? He was sending her pictures of himself in the shower while I tucked our mortgage into auto pay and vacuumed the living room. That was the moment the last piece clicked into place. She never had power over me. She just used my silence as a mirror, one that showed her what she was afraid to be. And now that I'd stopped reflecting her image back at her, she was crumbling. But I wasn't going to stop there. I was going to take this all the way. There's a specific kind of silence that comes before a storm, not loud, not sudden, just still, heavy, like the world is holding its breath. That was the silence between us now. She didn't know I'd read the messages, that I knew everything. But she felt something. The ground was shifting beneath her feet, and no matter how many times she tried to act normal, she couldn't hide the way her eyes kept flicking toward me at dinner. The way her words stumbled when I didn't respond the way I used to. I'd become a stranger in my own house. And she was terrified of him. Because that stranger didn't need her. She tried to flirt one night. Wore the black slip I once bought her on our anniversary, 3 years ago, I think. Stood in the doorway of our bedroom like some twisted ghost of the past, trying to summon a version of us that no longer existed. I didn't even look up from my book. I'm tired, I said, flipping the page. Long day. The flicker in her eyes then, that quick, hot flash of rejection, was the first real emotion I'd seen from her in weeks. She hated it. Hated feeling powerless. But that was the difference between us now. She played games. I played chess. And I had already made my move. I'd spoken to a lawyer. Quietly. Efficiently. We reviewed the texts, the app, the screenshots I'd collected. Adultery wasn't an automatic win in our state, but when paired with financial deception, with hidden purchases, private accounts, and evidence of infidelity, it was leverage. And I had plenty. I also had timing. I waited until the morning of her wellness retreat, an entire weekend she claimed was about self-care and mindfulness. In reality, she was meeting him at a cabin about 3 hours away. I knew this because I'd watched them book it together from her hidden email account, which she conveniently forgot was still linked to our shared tablet. She thought I was working all weekend. I let her think that. Watched her pack. Kissed her on the cheek. Wished her a relaxing trip. And then, once she was gone, I put the rest of the plan in motion. The bank accounts? Frozen and separated. The joint credit card? Cancelled. Her luxury car lease? Terminated. She hadn't realized it was under my name the whole time. By the time she arrived at the cabin, her phone would start lighting up with declined payments, warnings, cancellations. Confusion would turn to panic. Then desperation. I didn't go there. I didn't need to. I didn't want some dramatic confrontation in the woods. I wanted her to sit in that cabin with the man she destroyed our marriage for, and feel it all unravel. To realize he wasn't going to save her. That she wasn't running to anything. Just away. That night, I sent her one message. Just one. When you get back, don't come home. Papers will be delivered Monday. No punctuation. No rage. Just truth. I didn't block her. I wanted her to reply. To try and claw back what she thought she still owned. She didn't disappoint. Wait. What are you talking about? We need to talk. This is insane. You're blowing things out of proportion. You're really doing this? You're going to throw away everything. And finally, the one that made me exhale. Not laugh. Not cry. Just exhale. You're being so dramatic. You're not the type of man who walks away like this. That was it. That was the last thread she clung to. This fantasy version of me she'd built up in her mind. Quiet. Reliable. Emotionally pliable. Her emotional sponge. She thought she knew me. But she only ever knew the version of me that tolerated her. And that man was gone. I didn't reply. I slept better that night than I had in years. She came back Sunday night, even though I told her not to. Tried her keys. I had already changed the locks. I didn't come to the door. I just watched through the side window as she stood there in the porch light, tired, disheveled, and for the first time in years, unsure. She knocked, then pounded, then screamed my name. I stayed silent. Eventually, she slid down against the door, her voice breaking into a sob. She was gone by morning, left nothing on the porch but her pride, a broken heel, and the faintest smear of mascara on the edge of our doorframe. I watched the security footage later, just to confirm. She sat there for nearly an hour, alternating between crying, texting, and what looked like bargaining with the night sky. Then she got up, composed herself like none of it happened, and walked back to her car. Typical. The papers were delivered Monday, just like I promised. Served at her office, in front of people she used to love impressing. I wasn't trying to humiliate her. I just wasn't protecting her image anymore. That was a job for a husband. And I'd resigned. The silence that followed was louder than any fight we ever had. At first, nothing. No texts. No emails. Just that eerie calm that comes after a wildfire. Everything scorched and still smoldering. But for a while, it's quiet. I went to work. Hit the gym. Slept. Ate. Laughed. Lived. Then came the drip. I've made mistakes. Can we talk? You're still my husband. Don't do this out of anger. You're not thinking clearly. She still didn't get it. This wasn't about anger. It wasn't even about the affair anymore. It was about liberation. From the control, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the slow erosion of respect and intimacy disguised as normal marriage fatigue. She had taken all of it for granted. Because I never pushed back. And when I finally did, she thought I'd crack. That I'd come running after her. That I'd want closure or answers or apologies. But I didn't need closure. I already closed the door. What I wanted was peace. And I had it. Eventually, she stopped texting. A mutual friend told me she'd moved into a one-bedroom apartment near her sister's place, was driving a rental, and had started seeing a therapist. She also said the guy, her funny, golden retriever affair partner, was no longer in the picture. Apparently, when the financial faucet turned off and the reality of consequences set in, he wasn't nearly as charming. Shame. She didn't lose everything. I didn't go scorched earth. I didn't take the house or bleed her dry. I just took back me. My time. My energy. My loyalty. My silence. And that turned out to be more valuable than she ever understood. The last time I saw her was 3 weeks after the papers were signed. I was picking up coffee, and she walked in with sunglasses on, no makeup, hair tied back in a way I'd never seen before. Simpler. Realer. She froze when she saw me. I nodded politely and turned back to the counter. When I picked up my order, she stepped forward. "You look good," she said, hesitant. I smiled. Not cruelly. Just calmly. "I feel good." She stared like she was searching for something familiar. A crack. A softness. A version of me she could still reach. There wasn't one. I turned to leave, but before I did, I said one thing. "You once said I'd get intimacy when you felt like it." Her lips parted. Maybe to defend herself. Maybe to apologize. I didn't wait to hear. I stepped out into the sun, took a sip of my coffee, and left her standing there, watching me walk away, watching everything she used to control disappear. Because the truth is, she never had power. She only had permission. And I finally took it back.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.